There are two types of laws that are used to govern the citizens of any country to apply checks and balances on the people. These are criminal laws and civil laws. Criminal laws deal with a variety of crimes like robbery, theft, murder, rape, and various other physical and property damages. Then there are civil laws which deal with personal and family matters like of inheritance, marriage, divorce, adoption, and a lot more. Since ages, both these criminal laws and civil laws were governed by the local rules of the community or the religion. But in India at this point of time around independence, most of the criminal laws were codified by the British in the form of CRPC and IPC acts. However, civil matters were still being broadly governed by the local rules or the personal rules of the religion, and they were separate for every religion. Introduction of Uniform Civil Code as directive principle and passing of Hindu Code Bill were such steps taken by the government to unify and codify all the civil matters. But it caused massive opposition from all around and has been a contentious issue since then. So in today's video, we'll learn how Nehru's government was able to pass the Hindu Code Bill despite such opposition, and we'll also see the need and the formation of State Bank of India. So watch the video till the very end if you are a curious creature.
The content of this video reel is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed are those of the content creator and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, employer, or company. Viewer discretion is advised.
Every ancient societal setup have had their beliefs based on the roots from what and where they started from. So they have different practices and beliefs for everything. कोई खतना करता है तो कोई मुंडन, कोई अग्नि के सामने फेरे लेके शादी करता है तो कोई चर्च या गुरुद्वारे में. Some people dig graves, some people burn the deads. कोई बलि चढ़ाने को sacrifice and serving to the god बोलता है तो कोई इसे पाप की श्रेणी में रखता है. Hence every different religious and societal setup has different set of beliefs and faith. Now most of such beliefs do not affect individuals' rights and do not interfere and affect their life. But some practices did, like caste system, polygamy, sati pratha, triple talaq, female infanticide, child marriage and a lot more. ये कुछ ऐसी मान्यताएं हैं जो कि या तो राइट टू इक्वलिटी के विरुद्ध हैं या राइट टू लिव एंड लिव विद डिग्निटी एंड वैल्यू के अगेंस्ट है. Now all these laws and practices were written centuries and millenniums ago, depending on the time and circumstances corresponding then. However, some of such beliefs were still absurd right from the beginning. But due to the mythical significance religion taught to everybody, these were followed by the people blindly in the name of God and religion. And whenever someone tried to find logic and ask question about it, they were either abandoned or executed all through the past. Religion और उनके scriptures हमेशा पत्थर की लकीर की तरह रहे हैं, and hence they have been the order of the day all through the time since religion was created by mankind to organize people to create communities. And this has been the case with every religion everywhere in the world. But with science growing, there was improvement, and such questions couldn't be ignored more, and there were people bending their backs to logic. Absurd belief systems like witch trials and hunting, blasphemy executions, sati pratha, ethnical cleansing were all legally abolished gradually, thanks to the courageous social reformers. Such social reforms and improvements happened in the Hindu society and Indian context also, due to the pioneers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar and many more. But due to the mythical significance attached to such beliefs and practices, these are so deep rooted that it takes years to wipe it out completely from the society. For example, Sati Pratha was abolished in 1824 by William Bentinck thanks to the efforts of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. But you could see the last case of Sati being recorded in 1987 where Roop Kanwar of Rajasthan was the last recorded Sati. So it bloody took more than 150 years to completely unroot the foundations laid by such religious dogmas. Now around this point of time in our timeline in the 1950s, most of such practices which were threat to direct life of a person were clearly abolished, but there were still many practices which were threat to individuals' right to live with equality, dignity and value, like polygamy, child marriage, triple talaq, rights of divorcees and widows, adoption and succession laws, male dominant inheritance systems and a lot more. ये practices किसी की जान के लिए तो खतरा नहीं थी, but they were definitely a threat to individuals' right to live with dignity, equality and value. The Hindu Code Bill was one such step taken by the then government to bring in the reforms and improvement in the Hindu society. But unfortunately, rather than celebrating it, it has become a divisive and a contentious issue since then. Now, before jumping into the nuances of Hindu Code Bill, we should be very clear that when I say Hindu in the context of Hindu Code Bill, it includes Buddhists, Jains and Sikhs, because all these religions have been considered to come out of the Hindu religion. Now, since a very long time, there have been social reformers in the Hindu society who were against these illogical and inhuman practices, and they were quite vocal about it. In fact, the constitutional forefathers wanted to bring reforms and improvements in every section and religion of the society. While writing down the constitution, they believed India should be designed as a country which will encompass and embrace all the religions and beliefs and faiths. But it can't allow such practices and beliefs to go on which are against the basic human rights enshrined in the constitution, and these need to be abolished. Hence, they wanted to bring uniform civil code, ensuring reforms in every society and moving away from such practices which could be a threat to individuals' right to live with dignity and value. But there was a problem. At around this time in the mid 1900s, there was a clear increasing divide between Hindus and Muslims, and everything was not peaceful, and there were instances of communal violence and bloodshed, which were aggravated by the partition. Also, secondly, there were no such social reformers in the Muslim community who wanted changes in the Shariat or the personal law of Muslims, as we saw in the Hindu society. Owing to such facts, with communal violence prevailing and analyzing further disturbances, the then government decided not to add fuel to the fire and kept uniform civil code in the directive principles of the constitution, meaning that the future government should take endeavors and should take steps to ensure and to secure uniform civil code for everybody in this country. क्योंकि होपफुली शायद आगे जाके हालात ठीक हो जाएं। डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल का मतलब होता है इन दिशाओं में, इन डायरेक्शंस पे गवर्नमेंट को, स्टेट अथॉरिटीज़ को प्रयास करने चाहिए, and it is mentioned in part 4 of the constitution. Hence, to sum up, uniform civil code was not brought then and was kept in directive principles. But B.R. Ambedkar, who was on the receiving side of societal injustices all through his life due to such ill practices, wanted instantaneous reforms in the Hindu section of the society. Meanwhile, British government had already created a committee under B.N. Rao in 1941 to present a blueprint of improvements and social reforms in the Hindu personal laws. Based on the reports of B.N. Rao Committee II, a select committee was created under B.R. Ambedkar, and Hindu Code Bill was presented in 1950, containing 8 provisions including divorce, succession, adoption, maintenance, and restricting polygamy in Hindu society. This created a huge roar from the conventional and the conservative faction of the Legislative Assembly, and it became one of the factors Shyama Prasad Mukherjee created his own party, Bharatiya Janasangh. This whole episode of Hindu Code Bill became a huge topic of debate, and the other side believed the government shouldn't interfere with religious rituals. B. This interim government does not have the will of the people as elections hadn't happened yet. C. It should be brought in for everybody in the country and not for only Hindus. With such debates going on in the constituent cum legislative assemblies, Jawaharlal Nehru agreed not to pass the bill until he gets a clear mandate in the upcoming elections. B.R. Ambedkar, who was the law minister then, felt annoyed and frustrated by this backstep of the government, and hence he resigned from the government. Now, coming to the question why it was not brought for the Muslims or brought as uniform civil code for everybody has already been discussed, and I don't see anything illogical in it. But why the future governments have not taken any step on it is a question to ask for. Certainly, you can see the vote bank politics later. Unfortunately, this has not been dealt by any of the future governments until recently by BJP, and for that they should be appreciated. At least they are thinking on these lines. They have UCC in their manifestos. But the way they want to bring it will be a question of debate. Uniform civil code should be there, period, but it should not be saffronizing the situation. However, until you have a clear draft of uniform civil code presented by the government, any comments for or against are pointless. Because you can't really comment on a thing which you don't know. Anyways, coming back to the story, Jawaharlal Nehru agreed not to pass the bill until he gets a mandate in the 1952 elections. So he fought the elections on this basis, and he made it very loud and clear that he will bring Hindu Code Bill into action if he wins the election. And guess what? People actually voted for him on these grounds and he won with a thumping majority. upon which he brought in the Hindu Code Bill in 4 parts, Hindu Marriage Act 1955 being the first, which included legal restrictions to polygamy and the right to get divorced. The 3 other acts, namely Hindu Succession Act, Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, were passed in 1956, a year later. These all acts brought in the much needed improvements and social reforms in the Hindu section, and for which all the Hindus, especially women, should be thankful to Nehru and Ambedkar and various other reformers who enabled them to live a life with dignity. Now, after reaching at this point of time in our timeline in 1955, it must be very clear to you that we were an agrarian economy. And for our economy to grow, for our country to grow, there was a need to uplift the agricultural sector. और कोई भी बैंक जिसके पास मजबूत पकड़ और कंट्री वाइड प्रेजेंस थी तो वो था इंपीरियल बैंक ऑफ इंडिया, विच वॉज अ मर्जर ऑफ 3 प्रेसिडेंसीज, बैंक ऑफ ब्रिटिश टाइम, बंगाल, बॉम्बे एंड मद्रास, formed in 1921. Imperial Bank up till now was a privately held bank created to serve the British Crown and British and other European companies and traders, and also to the who's who of India like the Tatas. But it was not for every Tom and Dick and Harry. अर्थात ये आम आदमी का बैंक नहीं था. So in 1955, looking at the priority of lifting the agricultural sector and the need of agricultural credit, the government of India nationalized the Imperial Bank of India by renaming it to State Bank of India and merging it with 7 smaller banks. With this step, the agricultural credit became a real thing and it gave boost to the agricultural sector. अब उन समय के हालातों को देखा जाए तो I would say it was a brilliant step, क्योंकि ऐसे ही तो होगा. You finance the primary sector of your landscape, which is agriculture, and then they get to grow. फिर वे अपने बच्चों को पढ़ाएंगे, लिखाएंगे, and they will enter into jobs and they will enter into the lower middle class families. Then वो अपनी औलादों को और better education and upbringing देंगे and they will be entering the upper middle class. And then their kids have a better reach at resources. तो ऐसे करते करते 4-5 जनरेशन और पीढ़ियों बाद many would be in the top elite jobs, big businesses of the world, top officials, CEOs, directors of the multinationals, because of the support and the backing they received from the previous generation. That is when the economy will shift from underdeveloped to developing to developed. तो ये बहुत ही स्लो और लंबा प्रोसेस होने वाला था and it would take 4 to 5 generations to reach there and bear the fruits. And what we see, this is exactly around the same time we are right now standing in. No wonder we have top businesses, CEOs and leaders in the world. It was very well thought of. In fact, I am of the belief that the formation of the country, the creation of the constitution, all was on a very right note. हाँ, थोड़े बहुत differences of opinion थे, but it should be there. This is how democracy works. Constant debates and discussions, discussing it to the finest details, nitty-gritties and nuances. ये तो 1970 के बाद के political scenarios थोड़े बिगड़ने लगे, जिसके चलते हमारा development process delay हो गया. Otherwise, we would have been a developed nation by now. But unfortunately, what I feel today is that we are taking pride in fighting for the history, keeping future in peril, which could further delay the development process. Let's hope it doesn't and wisdom prevails. So in summary, we started brilliantly when the constitution was made, when independence was achieved. But the focus got shifted when politics was mixed with religion, appeasement, vote bank, power game, etc. This was all in today's video. See you in the next one and keep sharing to let Indians understand India. Feel free to post your perspectives in the comment section if you have something concrete. I will be happy to learn from other perspectives.